don't have to believe in this. It's not a requirement. No one's going to pull the fan card away from you if you don't. However, the evidence is at least modestly mounting. Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Penguins 6. Brian Rust with a couple of goals and a pretty assist on a Sidney Crosby goal, and Sid had 2 assists. And the new scoring leader in the National Hockey League had a goal and an assist as well. Evgeni Malkin with an empty netter there at the end, but also a vital primary assist in the opening minute, setting up Anthony Mantha for maybe the easiest goal of his life. Gino's now got 3 goals and 13 assists. Those 16 points tie him with Jack Eichel of the Golden Knights, Nick Schmaltz of the Mammoth. And that's also got Gino just ahead, 1 point ahead of Macklin Celebrini, 2 points ahead of William Nylander, Kirill Kaprizov, Nate McKinnon, and Sid. Gino's 39 years old, and he has the second most points through 10 games of a season by anyone aged 39 or older, behind only Gordie Howe, who had 17 points in the first 10 games for the 1968-69 Red Wings. He's been excellent. Sid has been excellent. But neither of them was anywhere near as excellent as Rust was in assessing them like this last night after the game.
They've been incredible. I never doubted it for a second. They could be skeletons walking around here, but I think they're going to still kind of give it everything they got. They're going to work as hard as they can, and they're always going to be leading this team.
Skeletons, man. That's fantastic. I mean, Rust's a pretty good quote in general, but the image of the two of them as skeletons still scoring at will, yeah, that one resonates. Listen, I brought this up back in the opener, the shutout of the Rangers at Madison Square Garden. You could see, and I mean plainly, this didn't require any sort of experience, much less expertise, that Gino was flying. He was all over the rink. He was the best player out there. The Rangers had no answer for him in any of the 3 zones. And all he's done since then is continue. He's just carried on at that pace with that passion. Now, you might also recall that I asked Gino a few days ago if he was trying to prove something. And who knows what that might be? Who knows what motivates the truly elite athletes? And he just said no, and that he's having fun, and if this ends up being something that's at or near the end of his career, he wants to be good. But this, what we're witnessing here, it isn't good. He's playing great, and I'm attempting to use that adjective appropriately. Heaven knows it gets misused a ton. He's great because he looks like the great version of Gino. There's all kinds of other places I could spread credit here. Mantha and Justin Brazeau, his very large line mates, have had plenty to do with that, and he's been inspired by them going back to the start of training camp. Dan Muse's system appears to favor Gino's style. I'm going to use this term again, in all 3 zones. The power play, where Gino's picked up 5 of his points and 4 of his league-leading 13 assists, that's been a factor as well. And I'm going to throw in something of my own here, and this isn't based on anybody whispering anything to me or anything to that effect. Gino has always been not just comfortable, but really genuinely satisfied being second to Sid. he's never had an issue with it, other than, of course, when they take the ice for warm-ups and for the game, which Gino insists on going last because he had those 2 years in the Super League up on Sid. But he actually enjoys deferring to Sid on the ice, off the ice. However, he has also always embraced being treated like a superstar. And allow me to explain that, because that sounds like it's some sort of exercise in vanity, and it's not. Way back in Gino's earliest days in Pittsburgh, Michel Therrien was disappointed by the scoring output of his super spectacular phenom rookie, and he took a copy, this is how dated this reference is, of an actual physical newspaper and showed Gino the NHL scoring leaders. And he asked, in plain English, it was our only common language, "Where's Malkin? Why is Malkin not on here?" And after that, those of you who go back to this time will recall Gino just went berserk. And I don't mean mad. I mean, he just put up points galore. And sure enough, Gino would show up on that list sooner rather than later. When Gino was snubbed, and I mean, you talk about another term that gets overused, this was the classic definition of what a snub really is. Being left off the NHL's top 100 of all time, the league's 100th anniversary, a mistake that the league cannot ever reverse because it was a moment in time. As upsetting as it was to people in Pittsburgh, as enraging as it was to Mario Lemieux, to Jim Rutherford, to people within the Penguins, Gino was for real hurt. And it was an odd sight at the time because, again, he wasn't the one that was looking to be the guy, but he at least expected to be respected for who he actually is. And he wasn't. And I'd argue that he still isn't. Well, maybe this is part of the path to achieving some of that. Because if he and Sid and Chris Letang and everybody else can get this team, this roster at this stage of its development into the Stanley Cup playoffs, and they can do it their way by being their own great selves, you'd better believe people will pay attention to it. When we come back, J1Q. For those of you who are doing real work in construction, in a warehouse, if you're a mechanic, you want reliable, comfortable gear to help you perform well on the job. Brunt Workwear's got you. They've got waterproof boots, safety toe, soft toe, pull-on, lace-up, whatever you need. You can wear them to work, and if they're not right for you, send them back. I don't know of any other brand doing that. Brunt was tired of the workwear brands out there cutting corners. You work too hard to be stuck in uncomfortable boots that don't hold up. So they built something better. Boots that are insanely comfortable and built for any job site. For a limited time, our listeners get $10 off. Just head to bruntworkwear.com. Use the code DK Sports and you're good to go. After you order, they'll ask you where you heard about Brunt. Do us a favor here at DK Pittsburgh Sports and tell them it was from this show. Today's J1Q comes from Kevin, who says, DK, Gino's wingers have historically been top six forwards who either haven't meshed with Sidney Crosby or were maybe considered not quite as good as Sid's wingers. This year, it seems like management acquired a couple of wingers who they thought would mesh well with Gino, and it's obviously worked so far. Do you think Kyle Dubas had that in mind when signing Anthony Mantha and Justin Brazeau? Really good question, Kevin. And my information is that they were in mind, but not in some cemented way. In other words, they weren't going to force square pegs into round holes if it didn't work. What was cool, though, was that this was how training camp started. This was not something that became figured out as they went along in drills. It was Gino and the big dudes. Not that Gino's a small dude, as Gino once famously spoke. I also big guy. But it's interesting how it harkens back through a lot of the years, and I actually love the way you phrased the way Gino's wingers have been selected over time. It's not always been like that, but it has been like that mostly. If you look at the years in which the Penguins had their strongest groups of forwards, you'll find that he was also out there with, players like Patrick Hornqvist and others of that caliber. But, Mantha has been a guy who has been seen as a top six for a long time. He's tended to fall short of that on any sustained basis. Brazeau, of course, is still really just trying to stick in the NHL, but he's had top six pedigree attached to him from his prospect years onward. But to take those two guys and those two tall trees and their frames and put them out there and allow them to come up with chemistry components to clear space for each other, to overpower people in some cases, which incidentally was what I saw last night in Gino's setup of Mantha in the opening minute. You just had two giant dudes barging into the St. Louis slot and then into the crease, and there it went. It was just slammed behind Joel Hofer. What I'm most reminded of is how very early in Gino's NHL tenure, his principal line mate was Ruslan Fedotenko. The Fedotenko, the terrific Ukrainian winger from a few years back, was just perfect for him. I used to say that it was going to be hard to find somebody else like that for him. Fedotenko, straight line winger, pulled people along with him as he entered the zone. He wasn't as big as Drew O'Connor, but think about some of the things that DOC did when he was in Pittsburgh, when he was really effective on the forecheck, where it looked like he would just swallow humans on his way across the blue line. Fedotenko would do that. Fedotenko had enough skill to work with Gino as the late arrival in the zone, which Gino has always loved doing. And there was just all kinds of goodness that came from that. I don't know this is going to go there. I'm not going to sit here and predict the future over actually really any of this that's happening at the moment. But I will say that you can see the impact that it has on the opponent of all three of these forwards having the size that they do. It is uncommon in the NHL. Appreciate the question. The Penguins are in Philadelphia tonight. After that, they go to St. Paul and then to Winnipeg. I'll be on the second and third legs of that trip. And, hey, who knows? Just have fun with it. It doesn't have to feel like the end of the world, does it? Just have fun with it. Let's do this again tomorrow.